Welcome back everybody to Ein Sof Learning. It's been a while since we've made another video, as I have been moving back and forth. I was on break from college recently. Now I'm back in session and we can continue with the regular flow of our series. We're going to continue in our series on Talmud Eser Sefirot, and I'm going to just review very quickly the last episode, which was about the four phases. Right now we're discussing the four phases of desire, what we call Bechina Aleph, Bechina Bet, Bechina Gimel, and Bechina Dalid. We already explained that the four phases must exist in every single emanated thing. Every single ne'etzal, we call in Hebrew. And ne'etzal is an item that has been emanated. It's an entity, a spiritual entity, which has been emanated. That's what we call a ne'etzal. Now, every single one of these spiritual entities contain four phases, four stages of development of the desire to receive. We know that the desire to receive is that vessel of reception with which this emanated being, this spiritual entity, receives its own sustenance. The way that the spiritual entities that exist in the spiritual worlds receive their sustenance, what we call shefa, their flow of divine light, is by virtue of their own desire to receive that sustenance. Without the desire to receive, those beings could not possibly exist. So therefore, every single entity that exists has by necessity this desire to receive. However, this desire to receive does not reveal itself all at once. It reveals itself slowly, which means that initially we only have the emanator, what we call in Hebrew ma'atzil, what you can think of as God or the endless light. That's the ma'atzil, the emanator. In this stage, this is, if you want to call, stage 0 or phase 0. But in Hebrew, we refer to this ma'atzil as bechinat shel shoresh, the phase that attributes to the seed or the source of all existence. The ma'atzil has zero desire to receive. It only contains the desire to share, which is what makes it a ma'atzil. An emanator has the desire to emanate, to give, to shine. And that is the nature of God. That's the nature of the endless light. He desires to give. There is no revelation of desire to receive, and therefore it is considered as the emanator. However, this emanator desired to create a vessel. It wanted to create a creation. God wanted to create a creation. And therefore, he needed to create a system whereby the desire to receive the sustenance that God desires to give would exist, so that way the creatures that he creates can benefit from the goodness that he wants to give them. Because there was only one reason that God created the world: in order to bestow goodness unto his creations. Because it is the nature of the good to do good. And that was the intention. That is the intention. And that will forever be the intention of God in sustaining creation. He wants to give you goodness. He wants to give you pleasure. He wants to do you good. So he created the world. However, this desire to receive, which we have to receive his goodness, does not appear at once. It unfolds through a series of 4 stages. And that's what these 4 phases are. The first phase is called Hitpashtut Rishona, the first expansion. This first expansion attributes to Sefirat Chokhmah. Then there's Hitgabrut Rishona, the first strengthening, refers to Sefirat Bina. Then there is Hitpashtut Shniya, which is the second expansion, which attributes to Zeir Anpin. Then there's phase 4 called Hitgabrut Shniya, the second strengthening, which refers to Sefirat Malchut. So these 4 phases embody the lower 9 Sefirot on the tree of life: Chochma, Bina, Zeir Anpin, and Malchut. So what about Keter? That's the Matzil. That's the emanator. That's the influence of the endless light within a partzuf, a spiritual system, spiritual entity. The Keter of every spiritual entity is the influence of the endless light within that entity. It does not have any desire to receive, rather it is marked by the desire to give. However, all 9 lower sfirot below Keter, from Chochma to Malchut, contain some level of desire to receive. Chochma has the least amount of desire to receive. Bina has a little bit more. Zeir Anpin has a little bit more. And Malchut has the most, what we call Hishtokekut, yearning. That's Bechina Dalid, phase 4. The only phase that is capable of pulling the light that God wants to give is phase 4, because it is the only phase that is considered to be complete in the desire to receive. The initial 3 phases, Chochma, Bina, Zeir Anpin, are not considered to be complete desires to receive. They are merely stages that cause the emergence of phase 4, which is the complete desire to receive. Phase 4 is the only phase that has the capacity to actually receive. That's what's called Kli Kabbalah, the vessel of Kabbalah. Kabbalah means to receive. The only Sefirah that is capable of receiving is Malchut, the Kli of Kabbalah. Now, the 2 Hitpashtuyot, meaning the 2 expansions, what we called Chochma and Zeir Anpin, are considered masculine because they give. But the 2 Hitgabruyot, the 2 strengthenings, what we refer to as Bina and Malchut, are feminine because they receive. So now let's get a little bit more detailed. And remember that this is all review from last week's episode, or not last week, but a few weeks ago episode. First phase is called Hitpashtut Aleph. This is the expansion of the light of Chochmah within the Partzuf, marked by the desire to receive, which is pulling this light of Chochmah. That's phase 1. Phase 2 is the strengthening of the desire to give, called Hitgabrut Aleph. That's the awakening that I don't want to just be a receiver, because being a receiver means that I'm distant from God. Because in spirituality, similarity brings closeness, and difference brings distance. Therefore, if I'm a receiver, I'm distant from God, who is a giver. So therefore, I wake up to this reality that I need to be a giver. That's phase 2. That's Hitgabrut Aleph. And by virtue of this awakening, I begin to flow or draw down the light of Chasadim. That's Hitpashtut Bet, phase 3. The expansion of the light of Chasadim within the Partzuf. So just to review, phase 1 is Or Chochmah. You extend light of Chochmah to yourself because you have a desire to receive. Phase 2 is the awakening of a desire to give. Phase 3 is the expansion of the light of Chasadim. The more you give, the more you desire to give, and the more you actually give, which means through doing the mitzvot, Torah, etc., with the proper kavanah of giving back to the Creator, not because you want to get to heaven. That's not giving. If you do the mitzvot because you want to get to heaven or you want a reward, that's receiving, not giving. But if you do the mitzvot because you know it makes God happy, and you know that it makes God experience an increase in joy, then this is what we call giving. This is how human beings can engage in the act of giving. Then phase 3, and that's phase 3, whenever you pull or draw down the light of chasadim. The fourth phase is called hitkabrut shniya, the second strengthening. This is whenever the reawakening of that desire to receive, which existed in phase 1, appears once again. However, it is now revealed in its completion. The desire to receive that existed in phase 1 was concealed. It was a very minute amount of desire to receive that was revealed. The majority of it was concealed. Now in phase 4, this same desire to receive that existed in Chokhmah has been fully revealed and actualized as a vessel of reception, and thereby becoming the vessel, what we call Malchut, that is capable of receiving the light of Chokhmah that was initially intended to be given to this creature. Those are the 4 phases in a very concise way. So there's 2 expansions, phase 1 and 3, and then there's 2 strengthenings, phase 2 and 4. Quickly again, phase 1 and 3 are expansions of light. The first one is an expansion of Chokhmah, and the second expansion is an expansion of Chasadim. And the 2 strengthenings are strengthening of the desire to give, and the second one is the desire to receive. So those are the 4 phases that we learned in last month's class. Now let's go on to the new subject at hand, which is regarding a deeper look into the Nekuda Emsayit. Remember that we are still on the subject of Nekuda Emsayit, the central point of Ein Sof. And if you're not sure what I'm talking about, then I highly advise that you stop watching this video right now and go watch the previous episodes, because you're probably very lost at this point. If you don't know what Nekuda Emsayit is yet at this point in the series, then I highly advise that you go back from the very beginning, and watch all the episodes leading up to this one, so that way you can be caught up with where we are right now. והנה בחינה ד' זו היא הנקראת נקודה אמצעית שבאין סוף ברוך הוא. Phase 4, which was Malchut, is what we call Nekuda Emsayit Shebe'ein Sof. That is the Nekuda Emsayit of Ein Sof. It's phase 4. That's the Ratzon Lekabel, the Kli Kabbalah, that we've been referring to as the only phase that is capable of receiving the light of Chokhmah in its complete form. And this Bechina Dalid is the Nekuda Emsayit that we've been talking about all this time. It's this phase 4. Ve'aleha ki uvan harav ba'amro tzamtzam et asmo b'nekuda emsayit asher bo. And this is what the Arizal meant when he said that the Ein Sof contracted himself in the central point that existed within him. There is a central point, a Nekuda Emsayit, that exists within the Ein Sof. And the Arizal was referring to Bechina Dalid. According to Rav Ashlag, with his commentary, he's helping us understand the Ari. When the Ari said that the Ein Sof contracted himself in his central point, he was really referring to Bechina Dalid. V'nikrat ken lihyota kli hakabbalah leor Ein Sof baruch hu. And the reason it is called this is because it is a vessel of reception for the light of Ein Sof. May he be blessed. Shehu bli shiur ubli gavul klal. Because the light of the Ein Sof is without border and without boundary whatsoever. Ve'al ken nivchenet metziuta kedogmat nekuda bepinimyuto uve'emsayito shel haor hahu. And therefore it is considered as being in the center or the innermost dimension of the light. Ve'haor mesavav ota V'davok ba saviv saviv ad ein shiur. And the light surrounds it continuously on all sides without measure. This Nekuda Emsayit exists directly in the center of the Ein Sof. It is in the Pinimyut and the Emsayut of that light. And the light of Ein Sof surrounds this Nekuda, and it is cleaving, adhering to this Nekuda from all sides, immeasurably, without any measure. Bli shiur. כי רק באופן זה ייתכן שתחזיק אור עליון בלי מידה ובלי שיעור כלל. Because it is only in this way that it can be considered that the Or Elyon is adhering to the Nekudam Sayit bli midah ubli shiur, without measure and without size whatsoever. M'she'achar kach ma she'ein ken bekli HaKabbalah she'me'acher HaTzimtzum, which is not the case with regards to the vessels of reception that come after the Tzimtzum. This is a very important point. There is a very big distinction between the Bechinat Dalid that exists within the Ein Sof, called Nekudam Sayit, and the Bechinat Dalid that appears after the Tzimtzum, because the Bechinat Dalid of Ein Sof is completely one with the upper light, bli shiur, without any measure. They are simply one, be'achdut pashut, simple unity. Hu shmo echad, him and his name, meaning the light and the vessel, are one. Therefore, Bechinat Dalid is not able to be discerned in any capacity within the realm of Ein Sof. However, after the Tzimtzum, there is a big difference. Let's see what he wants to say. כי רק באופן זה ייתכן שתחזיק אור עליון בלי מידה ובלי שיעור כלל. Within the Ein Sof, the Nekudam Sayid, this Bechinat Dalid, is completely one with the Ein Sof. מה שאין כן בכלי הקבלה שמאחר הצמצום, which is not so with regards to the vessels that come after the Tzimtzum and below. דהיינו בנאצלים התחתונים. And this is what we refer to as the Ne'etzalim Tachtonim, the lower emanations. The lower emanations. What are lower emanations? Those are spiritual entities that are created or emanated after the Tzimtzum. They come into existence within the Chalal Panui, within the void that becomes created after the Tzimtzum takes place. After the Tzimtzum takes place, the light of Ein Sof withdraws itself from the Nekudam Sayit of Ein Sof, thereby leaving behind an empty void, an empty space. And it is within this empty space that God emanates a beam of light, what's called Kav Yashar, a straight line, and begins to emanate the various Olamot, Adam Kadmon, Atzilut Bria, Yatzira, Asiyah, the 5 worlds that we're familiar with. Those 5 worlds become distinguishable in this concatenated way of sequence. One comes right after the other. First it's Adam Kadmon, then it's Atzilut, then it's Bria, then Yatzira, then Asiyah, only after the Tzimtzum. Before the Tzimtzum, there was no revelation of difference. Therefore, you could not actually discern Olamot. The word Olamot comes from the word Ne'elam, to hide or to conceal. There was no such thing as concealment before the Tzimtzum. Everything was completely revealed. It is for that reason that the Tzimtzum took place, because there was no space for creation. Because the act of creation necessitates a diminishment from the light of Ein Sof, a contraction, a withdrawal. Because is God's creation greater than God or lesser than God? By necessity, the creation is lesser than God. Because if God can create the world, that means that He is at least as large as the world and more. Therefore, He is greater than the world. Therefore, the creation of the world was not an addition to God. It was a concealment of the light of God. That's the only addition that can take place here. The only addition that exists in the spiritual worlds is a difference in form from that of the Ein Sof. What does that mean? The desire to receive. Before the Tzimtzum, there was no revelation of desire to receive. Therefore, what really did the Tzimtzum do? It revealed a certain measure of desire to receive. What did not exist before the Tzimtzum? מה שאין כן בכלי הקבלה שמאחר הצמצום ולמטה. With regards to the ne'etzalim tachtonim, the lower emanations which emerge after the Tzimtzum, their vessels of reception, their Bechina Dalid, is not completely devuk, cleaved or attached to the light of Ein Sof. Only the Nekudam Sayit of Ein Sof is attached to the light of Ein Sof in such a perfection, in such a perfect manner. אשר בהם נבחנים כלי הקבלה שמחזיקים אורם בפנימותם ותוכיותם. Within these lower emanations, there exists a kli hakabbalah that the light that exists within them is attached to in their pinimut and tochiyut. Within the midst of these lower emanations, ne'etzalim tachtonim, they have light, and the light that they have is attached to their pinimut and their tochiyut. That means their internal aspect and their middle aspect, their centermost aspect. Klomar, shedafnot hakelim shehu sod daled bechinot shebahem, that we're talking about the walls of the vessels, which is the secret of the four phases that exist within them. Hema osim gevul umida al haor shebetocham. They are what causes, or what create, or what make gevul, umidah, boundaries and measurements around the light that exists within them. Aha. The walls of the emanated beings, what we call the four bechinot, bechina aleph, bet, gimel, dalid, are considered to limit and place a measurement around the light that exists within these vessels of Kabbalah after the Tzimtzum. Vehu mipnei ha'aviyut shebekelim. The reason for this separation that gets created between the vessels of reception after the Tzimtzum from the light of Ein Sof is because of the aviyut that exists within the vessels. The vessels that exist after the Tzimtzum have a level of aviyut. What's aviyut? Aviyut is the coarseness of the desire to receive. If I'm extremely hungry, I have a tremendous amount of aviyut. If I'm not too hungry, I have a little bit of aviyut. If I desire to connect to Hashem a little bit, I have a little bit of aviyut. If I long and yearn day and night to connect to Hashem, I have a tremendous amount of aviyut. Aviyut refers to the coarseness or the thickness of a desire. The opposite of aviyut is called zakut, thinness, purity of desire. The higher you go on the tree of life, the thinner the desires are. Keter is the thinnest, containing zero desire to receive, only the desire to give. While Malchut is the thickest, the most av, as it contains the ultimate desire to receive. Ratzon lekabel beshlemut, in its completed form. V'al ken, shesham ha'or v'hakli ba'achdut ha'pashuta, besod hu shmo echad. Within the Ein Sof, however, hu shmo echad. Him and his name are one. There is no such separation between the vessels of Kabbalah and the light of Ein Sof. It is only after the Tzimtzum that we see such a circumstance where the vessels of reception are barred from the light of Ein Sof. Why? Because of the aviyut that exists within those vessels. It's like a paradox. It is precisely because of the desire to receive that exists within these vessels that they are then separated from their fulfillment that they seek. It is the desire to receive which separates the vessel from the fulfillment. What a paradox. The very act of yearning for the light of Ein Sof separates me from the light of Ein Sof, because difference brings distance. This is a very, very important point to understand before you move on to the next episode. V'al ken, ha'or shebo hu bebechinat Ein Sof. Therefore, with regards to the vessels of reception that exist in the Ein Sof, the light that exists within them is Ein Sof. It's endless. It's an endless amount of light. Be'achdut hapashuta. Simple unity between Hu u'Shmo, between Him and His name, referring to the light and the desires to receive that light. And therefore, it has now been explained thoroughly, the explanation of the Nekudah Sayyid that exists within the Ein Sof, may he be blessed, she'ein hamedubar chas v'shalom bebechinat makom v'shateach gashmi b'shiurim muchashim. And remember that we are not referring to physical concepts. When we're talking about a Nekudah Sayyid, God forbid you should think that we're referring to a physical entity, implying some sort of a space. No, there is no space in the physical sense. There is a spiritual place called Nekudah Sayyid, called Malchut of Ein Sof, called Bechinat Dalid of Ein Sof. The Arizal referred to it as a makom, because there was no makom panui before the Tzimtzum. It doesn't say that there was no makom. It says there was no makom panui. That means that there was a makom that was simply not empty. The word panui means empty, vacant. The Arizal says that there was no vacant space or vacant place before the Tzimtzum, implying what? That there was a place. But God forbid you should think it's referring to a physical place. What it's referring to is a desire to receive. Anywhere you see the word makom in Kabbalah, it is referring to ratzon lekabel, a desire to receive, a kli of Kabbalah, a vessel of reception. That's what we call a place, makom. We are not referring to a physical place, God forbid. However, the Bechinat Dalid, phase 4, which is included in the Ein Sof, is called this. Al Shem Achduta Hapashuta Im Ha'or Ha'elyon Kemevoar. In accordance with the simple unity that it has with the Or Elyon, as we have explained. That's why it's called a makom. That's why it's called ratzon lekabel. That's why it's called a Nekudah Sayyid, a malchut of Ein Sof. Why? Why does it have these names? Because it is a space that is able to receive the light of the Ein Sof in an immeasurable way. In a way that is Ein Sof. In a way that there is no separation between the light and the vessel. It is achdut pashut, simple unity. ודבר הצמצום הנעשה בנקודה האמצעית הזאת כבר נתבאר לעיל אות מם. וזה שכתוב הרב אין שם היטב. And it says that the matter of the tzimtzum, which the Nekudah Sayyid made, has already been explained above in ot mem. If you want to learn more about the Tzimtzum, which this Nekudah Sayyid did, go to the previous classes in Ot Mem, where we explain the meaning of the Tzimtzum as the withdrawal of the light of Ein Sof from the Nekudah Sayyid. That's really what the Tzimtzum was. Nekudah Sayyid diminished her Ratzon Mekabel, or desire to receive, resulting in the withdrawal of the light from within her. That was really what the Tzimtzum was. So, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you learned something. And if you did, share, comment, like, and subscribe to help this channel grow and reach more people. And I'll see you in the next class.